How do you manage those energy vampires in your life? We all have them. Okay, so we're gonna be exploring that in this video today. And so a few things we're gonna cover. We're gonna talk about what exactly is an energy vampire, and then what are a couple of practical things that you and I can do to manage energy vampires. So let's talk about the first thing. What exactly is an energy vampire? It's somebody that after we're with them, we just feel kind of drained. We feel not inspired. We feel drained. We feel exhausted. And so it's going to be different for different people. But for a lot of people, when I ask them, like, what is kind of the variables that defines what an energy vampire is, I'll hear things like if they blame, if they criticize other people, if they play the victim, if they whine. It just feels like this weight, okay? And so we're going to have energy vampires in all parts of our life. We'll have them, it could be a client, a team member, a family member, a neighbor. It can even be a friend. It could be, all of us, we get older, we have different friends in different parts of our life. You might have a friend that you've known for years, and all of a sudden you realize, like, wow, we're really in a different place. And so, this is the thing around relationships, is that we kind of evolve. And so kind of understanding this concept, I think, is really helpful to kind of know what that is. And then most importantly, what can we do about it? Okay, so number one is realizing that there's going to be lots of people that when we're with them, we just feel deflated, okay? Drained. Okay, so how do we actually fix it? Okay, so how do we fix it? There's a couple of really quick tips. The first one, and you may or may not like these tips, but I'm going to give it to you, okay? So the first one is to realize that our job is each to manage our own energy. Now, when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about emotional energy. I'm responsible for managing my own emotional energy. It's not your job to manage me. It is my job to manage myself. My husband is responsible for his own emotional energy management. My children are responsible for theirs. My team members are responsible for theirs. And so it's really important that we realize that we are all responsible for our own emotional energy management. So how do we do that? Well, you want to make sure that you look at how are you spending your time. So, I've talked about this on lots of other videos. I talked about this in my 3 chairs, the leadership book, that, we want to be really careful that how we design our day, our daily routine, as well as our weekly routine, is filled with things that are actually going to energize us. So things that are really important are things like sleep, nutrition, getting enough nutrition, things that you can have like really good focus time, times that you can actually concentrate refueling time. If you're not getting daily refueling time, you are probably going to be really drained. So the first step, okay, is we have to think of ourselves as like this little battery that gets energized and it gets depleted. And we want to make sure that every day we are being very intentional to doing what we can control, which is ourselves, to maximize our own emotional energy. So for example, I know for myself, I have to be extremely careful with my sleep. Sleep is a game changer for me. My mother tells me I've been like that since a baby. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm just drained, okay? And so I have to be very careful to make sure I get enough sleep. I have to be very careful to make sure I get really good nutrition. I have to be very careful to protect my meditation. I have to be very careful to protect my refueling time. And so if I am focused on what I know I need to do every single day to protect my own key priorities, then I will be able to be a full battery and I'll be fully energized. So why does this make a difference? Because if I am fully energized, my ability to manage some of these relationships in my life, whether it's work or home, I'm going to be a much better version of myself for the second tip. Okay, so step number 1 is we've got to really manage our own energy management. Ask yourself, what do I need to do on a daily basis and a weekly basis to make sure I am energized every single day? Okay, every single day. So that's kind of number 1. The second part is once we are fully energized, we're like a little battery, okay? So we're fully energized. The reality is there's lots of people in our world that are going to be, as the term is called, energy vampires. And so they might blame and complain and criticize and try to pull you down. We can't control them. but we can control us. And so what you want to do is, the key with this is not to own it. Don't absorb it. Put a little shield around yourself. You are not responsible for other people. You are responsible to others, but not for others. So you want to kind of put a little boundary around yourself to protect that. Okay, so that's really important. Okay, so that boundary helps you not kind of absorb their emotional energy. You can kind of like protect yourself with that. And the second thing you really want to do, kind of like part of that, I guess it's like part B, is really focus on setting boundaries. Boundaries are your best friend. Boundaries are your best friend, because when we set boundaries, we're kind of protecting ourselves. So for example, let's say you have a friend, you've had them for a long, long time, a loyal friend, but you're just in a different place and you just find you're really drained when you're with them. And let's say it's been a friend that you've had since kindergarten, but you don't know what do you do with this person? Well, you just figure out, like, I still want this person in my life, but maybe not to the same level or in intensity that I used to have it before. So maybe instead of seeing them once a week, you're seeing them once a month. Maybe you actually share honestly with them. I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm struggling a little bit in our relationship because I find it a little draining when I hear about all the complaining. If you have a really good friendship, you'll be able to have that kind of honest conversation. And so sometimes you might say something in a loving, respectful, kind way, or maybe you just kind of create a little bit more distance. And so instead of seeing them once a month, you're seeing them instead of seeing them once a week, maybe you're seeing them once a month. And so you kind of create a little bit of barrier. Instead of spending 5 hours going out with them, maybe you do like an hour coffee. And so what you're doing, you've got that person in your life, but you're setting up a boundary so that you do it to a point that you can actually manage it. And so that's just one way, but you can set boundaries with all kinds of things. You can set boundaries with your team members. You can set boundaries with clients. You can set boundaries with your colleagues. You can set boundaries with your spouse. But the key with setting boundaries, I will have to do a whole other video about this, is you got to make sure you're setting the boundary in a loving, respectful, kind, gracious, and clear way. Okay, so remember, everybody, that we cannot control everybody else. We can only control ourselves. So focus on making sure that you are doing everything you can to maximize your own emotional energy, increase your battery, so you've got full capacity to manage some of these other people in our life. And remember to focus on what you can control, which is setting boundaries with certain relationships.